Okay, we're good. It should be working.
We're back.
Meeting.
Quorum has been determined and the state board will now proceed with the meeting. At this time, President Thompson will present the leadership report.
Good evening. We actually did not have any external meetings in August, just like we did not have a public meeting. We will send an update with like just reminders of things that board members are already aware of sometime this week. But no new meetings in August. So it's a quick leadership report.
Are there any questions about the mini leadership report? If none, then I am pleased to turn to our Executive Director, Bernice Butler, for her report.
Good evening, members of the DC State Board of Education and guests. Since we last met, the SBOE team has taken both time off and gotten things done. So we held our first full staff retreat to strengthen communication and alignment across all of our work. We have a full complement and we'll be adding one additional person once the new budget's load through a new position we received through the budget process this year. We have identified the finalists for our student representatives and we'll begin the process of checking references over the next week. We hosted a DC education budget training session with members from the Deputy Mayor of Education's office to walk through particular highlights of the FY24 Ed Cluster budget and just things to put the board on notice in terms of FY25 of what may be coming. We finalized logistics for the state board's fall retreat and onboarded our first ever strategic communications fellow, Alicia Rashaw. So please welcome Alicia, everyone. The state board, all final details for the state board retreat and Sunday's national game engagement will be in your inboxes by the close of business tomorrow. Please read all information as it is vital to the success of both events and there is security involved at the NAS ballpark. The office will be in the midst of preparing a sexual harassment report and language access report to address requirements by the DC government over the next couple of months. And lastly, over the next few weeks, we'll be focusing on closing out all purchasing and spending, finalizing member travel and registration for the NASB conference, and preparing to mail, to do a final round of mailers for the DC State Board agency offices, including the Ombudsman and Office of the Student Advocate. If you have not had a chance, please be on the lookout for our advertisement on the metro station or bus near you. They are out and they're up until the end of September. Some of your pictures are there, so people can know you when they see you. So please be on the lookout for those and send pictures if you can. Last but not least, just thank you all for your time. Had some time off in August. It was great. I'm excited to be back and I'm excited for the team and what we have planned for the fall. Thank you, Vice President O'Leary. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Director Butler. Are there any questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Executive Director Miller. In terms of the student representatives, when will board members be notified of the finalists and when will students be notified of the finalists?
Great question. So students will be notified this week as we will be checking their references and want to let them know. And also the students that were not selected as finalists, we will also be letting them know that all applicants who applied to be student reps are also applying to be part of the Student Advisory Committee. So they will be accepted as that larger body of folks. And this, we can actually send out via email the finalists, because there are more than 4 finalists. We didn't feel like it was appropriate to announce all of their names without having to make a decision that people find out here versus before we can contact them. But we can send you all of the finalists via email tomorrow so that you can know who they are. They are ranked in terms of scoring for the scores that you all submitted when you all reviewed all 44 applications this year. Yeah, it's a lot more than last year. So thank you all for all the work you did in that. And the goal is to have everything finalized so that we can do our on-site swearing in the last week of September.
Thank you.
So, and I will say that of the finalists, it's an even literal, we did not plan it. We were very excited to find out it's a literal split. The exact same number of DCPS and the exact same number of DC public charter schools, which was not a part of our discussion until after. We were like, oh, maybe we should look at this. And it worked out. It's half and half. So we're very excited about that.
Great, thank you so much. And the applicants were fabulous. And so it was hard to decide on a small number of people. Thank you, Director Butler, and your questions. I will now turn over the next 45 minutes of our meeting to the Office of the State Superintendent of Education, who will present updates on planned changes to the DC school report card. OSSE and the State Board hope to receive feedback from the public through outreach and engagement to help develop and test a new DC school report card by December of 2024. OSSE will also present the process of developing standalone financial literacy standards for DC high school students. The standards will give the students opportunity to complete classes that teach them how money works in a comprehensive and equitable way. And we've been talking about this for a long time, at least since I've been on the board, and I'm so glad that we finally have it. So the crew of OSSE is here to let us know everything. It's all yours. They're on your clock.
Thank you so much,
Sure.
Vice President O'Leary. It's exciting to hear about all the students interested. We always appreciate their input and value their perspectives. It's also exciting to hear that you might be on buses. I know my wife was on a bus stop when she was in high school, and so she was always jealous of the people who got to be on the buses. So you're at a higher level. And it's wonderful to be back here with the State Board after taking a break in August. We have 2 agenda items and 3 primary objectives for this evening's working session, which I will lay out before handing it off to my fantastic and talented colleagues. First, Pradal and Megan from the Division of Teaching and Learning will be providing you an update on our progress toward financial literacy standards. This will include background information about our stakeholder engagement, and provide a preview of next steps. Then Alex will provide information on the EC school report card, including some background information requested by the board, information about the 2023 report card, and information on our collective 2024 report card engagement work. Our first objective for this evening's working session is to provide you with information on our financial literacy engagement work and provide insight into what we have heard. I want to emphasize that we are not at a stage where we can provide any specific standards or information on what will or will not be in the draft standards. However, if members have any ideas they want to put forward, we of course are always eager to hear your perspectives. Second, we will provide information on our 2023 report card, which is currently in development. We hope that this will provide a better understanding of the base from which we will be working as we look forward to enhancements for the 24 report card. And then finally, we aim to align on next steps for engagement for the 2024 report card, including on questions to include in the public survey. Again, I want to emphasize that our goal this evening is not to align on the results of what will be included in the report card or how it will look, but simply to align on how we will work together to do public engagement. So with that, I will hand it over to Ms. Megan Dumont.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Megan Dumont. It's nice to see some of you again, or to meet those of you I haven't had an opportunity to connect with before. I am the special assistant for the Division of Teaching and Learning and the project manager for the Financial Literacy Standards Development Project. So I'm going to start by giving some brief background on this work. So our work on the standalone financial literacy standards is really in response to the need for there to be more teaching and more learning about financial literacy skills for our students. So next slide, please. This should hopefully look familiar to you all. It is our timeline for the development of these standards. Since we last met with you all in July, we have engaged in the stakeholder engagement process. We have met with some experts. We have met with some teachers and students throughout district, which you'll hear more about in a moment. And we are preparing to move on to reviewing that data and beginning the drafting process. With that, I will pass it to my colleague, Vidal Moore, who will tell you about stakeholder engagement.
Thank you, Megan. My name is Vidal Moore. I'm the Educator Policy and Equity Specialist at the Division of Teaching and Learning at OSSE, and very excited to talk to you today about the stakeholder engagement that I've been leading to support this financial literacy standards drafting process. I can very honestly tell you that from the very first meeting of our financial literacy task force, we made it abundantly clear that we wanted these standards to be responsive to the real ever-changing world that our students live in. And we've done so by, one, making sure that we're balancing the realities of fiscal responsibility with the unavoidable impacts of systems, structures, and economies. But we've also done this by listening. We want to make sure that public feedback very much guides our steps in this process, though we might not be able to respond to everything the public wants. We definitely want to start there. So I'm going to go to the next slide. We wanted to make sure that we had a very wide breadth of opinion here. We've spoken to students, families, educators, financial literacy experts. This includes folks in the finance industry, in addition to financial literacy educators, both in the K-12 and higher ed spaces. Using these folks as feedback to help guide us towards what is necessary, what is relevant, and what will ultimately be engaging for our students. We've collected this feedback through two vehicles, a survey and a set of focus groups that we've held for educators, community members, and students. We've broken down our feedback sessions into four main parts. So first, we've had content knowledge versus skills, really trying to get at what is the difference between knowing what a good budget looks like and actually being able to create one. We've asked folks what the financial realities of different groups look like. So how might it be different for someone to have a financial reality as a Black person or as a woman or someone who lives in a particular zip code? We've asked for DC specific content. What should our students know that a student in Chicago might not necessarily need to know? And we've also just asked for other recommendations and resources. We've reached out to the community through social media and through DC's very vibrant education ecosystem through a host of education groups and advocacy groups. So talk to you a little bit about what we heard from our focus groups. We did two educator focus groups, one student focus group, and two open community focus groups. We found some really common themes across all of them. In terms of content knowledge, we heard a lot about credit scores, including from students, that they really wanted to know how credit scores work and what they need to do to build good ones and stay away from bad ones. We heard a bit from all community members about financial psychology. How does your upbringing and how does your personality affect how you interact with your finances? We heard a bit about different sources of income from folks. On the skill side, we heard quite a bit about paying for post-secondary education. Quite a bit about managing debt, as you can see how that would roll with the credit scores, and also quite a bit about how to file taxes. In terms of what we heard in our focus groups about what folks would like to learn about how different groups are impacted, we heard a lot of talk actually about generational wealth and how different people might be coming from different starting points when it comes time to figure out your financial success. Heard a lot about predatory financial services targeted at different groups. And we also heard a bit about how people need to be able to advocate for the justice for themselves and for others if they do run into these sort of predatory financial services. In terms of what's DC specific, we heard a bit about DC government benefit programs, youth employment opportunities, and how to save money in DC given how expensive it is to live here. And go to the next slide. Thank you. So for our survey, as of October 31st, we had 56 respondents, slightly skewed for folks a little bit over 40, mostly DC residents, a great representation among teachers and parents, and a good showing of my Ward 4. We can go to the next.
October 31st.
August 31st.
Oh, sorry, August 31st, sorry. I have a lot of things happening in October.
Halloween.
Yeah. In terms of survey results, we're a lot of similar things. So for content knowledge, again, quite a bit about credit scores. Folks really want to know how to get a good one and keep a good one. Quite a bit about debt. On the debt, I will make a note that folks did push that they want students to know the difference between good and bad debt, right? So not all debt is bad and not all debt is good, and students need to learn how to make informed decisions with debt. In addition, we heard a bit about determinants of salary potential, particularly from our educators. Educators really wanted to make sure students knew what was going to lead them to seeing a certain number on their paycheck. For skills, we saw a bit about creating and following a budget, reading a pay stub, and then saving for long-term financial goals. In terms of the implications for different demographic groups, our survey turned up quite a bit of conversation around systemic racism and its effect on financial opportunity. A bit of talk about gender and racial pay gaps, and also how to advocate for yourself and others. In terms of what's DC specific, we saw a bit about DC specific tax laws. Folks thought students should ultimately know what local taxes look like and how they affect their day-to-day. DC government benefit programs. And as a note on the DC government benefit programs, this was definitely very much tied to the paying for post-secondary education knowledge point, because folks really wanted students to know what DC related scholarships there are here, because we do have a lot of DC specific benefit programs, and there are also tuition. There's also different things that will go on tuition depending on which school you go to. So a lot of educators and community members wanted to make sure students were completely aware of those options, those DC specific options for them when it comes time for them to think about post-secondary opportunities. And then lastly, we had navigating DC's housing market, which I'm sure I don't have to tell everyone here why that is a very important skill for us to dig into. But that is a summary of our stakeholder engagement thus far. I'm very excited to talk with you all more about it, and I'll pass it over to Megan.
Yes, all right. And so in conclusion for our section, a couple of next steps. As I noted, the OSSE team is reviewing the data we've received so far from stakeholder engagement. And based on what we've seen so far, we have determined that we're going to keep that survey that we mentioned opened until September 15th. And we would really love help from you all in elevating that survey to your constituents. And then we will be working on drafting standards, leveraging the feedback that we've received from stakeholders so far, leveraging our experts for a review, and we are tracking towards having a draft of the standards available for public comment in December of 2023. So that is all from us, and I will wrap it up. I will actually pass it on to Alexander and Kelly to talk about the chart.
Can we ask questions before we get to the report card?
We're planning on just doing the questions at the end for both sets.
Just the next session is a whole lot longer, and so I don't want people to forget.
If sure, we can make that accommodation. Yeah.
Are there any questions?
Yes.
Representative Williams?
If you have questions,
In the queue.
Okay.
are we getting up in the queue?
Yeah, why don't we start with Representative Reed, move down this way.
Awesome. So thank you for information on the work related to financial literacy standards. A few things that kind of popped out. I'll start with the things that the hearts provide. I'm sure I love the emphasis on DC government benefits. Because I think that it's important for our students to know exactly what resources DC has to tap into. And a lot of that kind of gets buried not out to students. So I love that that's a component. Let's see. I like the piece that was mentioned about career planning, like career ladder trajectories. When you pick this career, it's what it means for you financially. I think that is, or how much you need to pay for a degree to get to that career, or how much financial aid assistance you might need to, get a part of that ladder, and also not, getting students to be discouraged by, some of the prerequisites to get into certain career paths because of the certain resources that we have is pertinent for our students to understand. Some of the things I had question marks about, I'm curious about investing. Having students to learn about that, a lot of education organizations, it's like an investment game, you know, even if it's the whole, I don't know, it's almost like a demonstration kind of, they may or may not be given the amount of money, but they get to, you know, invest and learn about that. I remember being a high school student with a student in my class who, at that time, Apple was pennies, and I wish I would have took his advice, but because it was something very different from what I've ever heard and grew up with, that was opportunity missed. And maybe if I was learning it also from my teachers, that would have been something reinforcing. So I would like if we can explore that within the confines. I'm sure we don't want to, you know, tilt the market scale anyway. I'm curious about WTU engagement. I'm not sure if we can or cannot engage them because they're the union. I'm not sure how OSSE, but they're usually a pretty decent resource when it comes to teacher engagement, educator engagement. So I see that. And then, of course, I'm always going to say, how are we going to deal with the survey, the gap in respondents from Ward 8, or any wards that are not well represented in this survey. And it's not, I'm not pushing for an extension in the survey. I'm pushing for OSSE to get out into our communities and engage with folks related to these, because I know for sure residents have a lot to say. And would love to meet and engage with you and give their feedback. And you also can hear just off of some of the mindset and ideas that come with even entrepreneurship. That's probably something that will come out of my community a lot. So being able to, you know, engage with the community, I would love to see that to step in the gap for what we always know for the most part is going to be a gap in respondents from certain.
Thank you, Representative Goulet.
Well, I just want to thank you for the presentation. I think it's really good. I think what I really like is you helping students who may be going off to college, getting that first credit card, understand the consequences of that credit, that responsibility. So I think that's really helpful. I'm glad to see that in there. I think just to build upon what you said, I think one of the things when I've talked to students is some students just don't see a path for how they're going to be able to stay in DC, you know, when they graduate. They don't understand what the different choices that they make mean for jobs, for college. And I think going through those scenarios you talked about and showing them the options we have in the city, like we have jobs right now that we'd love to be able to fill in nursing for teachers, fire, police, transit workforce. Like those are jobs where we really need our DC students to want to get into. Their jobs in some cases where you can go through 2 years at a community college here that are, you know, and come out with no debt and be ready to work. So I think showing students multiple paths to financial success and then showing them how they have a future here in our city, I think is what really excites me. And that would energize kids because I think sometimes people lose hope with, you know, how expensive it could be to live in the city and they don't see the paths. So the more you can show multiple paths to students and get them excited about it, I think the better. So I think it's great work. I can't wait to see more of what you guys have done. And I'll look forward to participating in the process.
Thank you, Representative Williams.
Yes, thank you for the thorough presentation. It was really easy to digest and I appreciate the scope of it. I have two questions. So I'm curious, and similar to Representative Reed's piece around DC specific supports for students, like my school has a great, college counselor has been there for a long time. And so students are well aware of the DC tag and all of the DC specific benefits, but that doesn't exist across all schools. So I'm just curious kind of what outreach will look like, what the plan is for outreach to particular school communities, and how I thinks about that. And then my second question is just in terms of soliciting student feedback, like how did you gather student voices for the focus groups?
I'm happy to start. First, I really appreciate the point that you made, consistent with what we are hearing and consistent with Representative Reed's point. We do see different levels of, or we have seen different levels of engagement to date, and we do think that is based on some schools already have strong financial literacy programs underway, and so it was very easy to engage Other schools do not currently have that same framework. And so we want to be really thoughtful and intentional about engaging them. To date, our engagement has really been based on OSSE providing the invitation broadly and making sure that that information is publicly available. We're really excited to talk to you and to talk to any of you about specific ideas to engage specific schools moving forward. We tried to be quite intentional about both engaging schools that do have strong existing financial literacy work underway and also schools that do not. Consistent with the information that Fadal shared, we are hearing very, very similar themes across the city, which is heartening to us because it suggests that there's a real opportunity for OSSE to push in and lead and establish strong standards. But we know that that engagement is not yet done. So to the extent to which there are specific ways or ideas for how we can engage in each of your wards and in different school communities, we're excited and open to it. We're also really excited. I love that this meeting started by talking about convening the next student advisory committee. We're really excited to connect with that group as soon as it is convened and underway. The timing of this work is such that we did a fair bit of it over the course of the summer. And so for our student engagement, it was easier to tap into existing student organizations rather than students in school, because many schools are not in session during the summer. So we have coming up next week, an upcoming school visit that we're excited to get more student voice, and then happy to continue the conversation with anyone about what that looks like.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
Representative Chang, did you have your
Can I
hand?
make a suggestion?
Let me get the question, because we're gonna run out of time.
Go.
I've got 2 questions.
That's fine.
You'll be, okay, you got,
And President Thompson has raised her
right,
hand.
right, President Thompson has a question.
Hey, everybody. My macro level question. How are we assessing where we're doing well with these standards and where we're coming short, a year, 5 years, 10 years into the actual implementation of these? There's very little in the actual day-to-day. I think I'm really curious about how we're learning from it, tweaking it down the line, and how we're executing it and assessing how we're executing.
Do you mean once these standards are implemented?
Yeah, like what does
Yeah.
success look like for financial literacy standards?
Yeah, that is a great question. And in early years, we are going to provide these standards, make them available for schools that are implementing financial literacy, while simultaneously on a separate track doing work around graduation requirements. And so these 2 work streams are happening in parallel. I think success in financial literacy, we would expect to see some relationship between success in students' academic competency in mathematics and in financial literacy. Those 2 skill sets and are not the same, but they are certainly related, and they can be mutually reinforcing in terms of helping students to understand the real life application of the math skills that they are gaining. But that's something that we will be working on as we move towards
It's
implementation.
a whole bigger thing, but I would love to push us to think about how we actually think about wealth as even if it's not something we can track, as something that is a goal, right, of why we're doing this and moving folks out of poverty. And the research there being so focused on social capital, right, from the Christensen Institute and others, then where can we, I don't see any of that in this, right? Like, where can we actually help bring folks in? So, I mean, what their research is saying at least is, if you don't know somebody who does something different from your personal family circles, it's very hard to, you're not gonna change your behavior or be able to think that that's accessible just because someone in the classroom tells you that is now within reach. How do we actually build some of the things that we know are building wealth as part of this? And I said this last time, I mean, so much of the research also shows that just teaching about the stock market, it doesn't actually create any behavioral shifts in people.
Put it in trial. Yeah.
So how do we,
Definitely appreciate that push.
Yep.
I think there is sort of a lot of system level things that go into that. For example, our AEIP advanced internship program sort of gets students in the door and a lot of times to make those social capital connections. And now that exists outside of this, obviously, but I think there are a lot of other steps in addition and in combination of this that sort of go towards that goal that you're going to. But definitely appreciate that. And I would maybe do a slight pushback on the idea that what we say in the classroom can't matter at all. I would say from my own perspective, I remember I was in my freshman year economics class and I had a professor say, oh, if you just he said, open a Roth IRA account and put like $1,000 in there a year. And like in 10 years, you'll be a millionaire. And I opened a Roth IRA because of what I had heard. So I think that there are actual impacts that you can get.
So is that problem? President Thompson?
Yeah, I think Representative Chang's question is the right one. It's an important one. I also am, and then shifting gears, I'm actually also really curious about the content that is a lot more point in time. So like the housing market right now, what's good guidance about the housing market right now versus good guidance 5 years ago, given that my guess is most students aren't buying a house in the next 6 months. Like, how are we staying up to date, and how are we like, what level of information is the right information, or even taxes? So like, I'm somebody who tends to like to do my own taxes. I go in, is the level of guidance for giving people like about how to make decisions, how to do planning, what are resources around. Do you know what I mean? Because even like tax attorneys, it's not like they memorize the tax code and it never changes. You have to look every year and see what's adjusted. So I'm curious, given that content, it is so quickly evolving, what it looks like to set standards and like what the right grain sizes and the right cadence around updates should and could be.
Yeah, I really appreciate that question. And consistent with the work that we did together on social studies, we are interested in being very, very intentional in ensuring that these standards support students in developing the skills that they need, not just to be savvy consumers today, but to actually be able to be savvy consumers in the future as the market changes, the financial reality change, as their own financial circumstances change. If they do take Andrew's teacher's good advice and invest $1,000 in a Roth IRA today, and then every year subsequently, what that will mean for them in 10 years and in 20 years. Consistent with a conversation that I'm hearing, we heard loud and clear, and are very interested in supporting our DC educational stakeholders in ensuring that these standards focus not only on individual and personal decision-making, but also in those broader systemic factors. And that President Thompson and Representative Chang, I think, really gets to the heart of what you're saying, which is financial literacy is not just about the decisions that I make as an individual, but it's also about the circumstances in which I'm working. And there are some really nice opportunities for us to reinforce some of the economic standards in our social studies standards through this work and incorporate them by reference, so that we're making sure that we're not just adding more to students' plates and to educators' plates, but instead actually using those two tools, our new financial literacy standards, our new social studies standards, to be mutually reinforcing and give our students a holistic set of skills that they need.
Representative Patterson.
Okay, I'm asking this question because I thought that Representative, my friend down here at the end would ask an AI question. When I see systemic racism in here and its effect on financial opportunities, I'm very curious about it. Are you doing this strictly from a historic perspective, or are you going to consider things like AI which are now coming online and they can be very discriminatory in its usage and who gets what type of credit, what you're paying, what your credit rates are, those type of things? Have you guys given any thought to that be a part of this literacy?
Well, I'll answer that question in two parts. We're very interested in not just looking at historical realities, but also current realities that students will face. AI is a huge piece of that. And certainly touches on a lot of the points that we've made. Many AI algorithms have that are used, for example, for financial modeling, for lending, for houses, are discriminatory based on racial characteristics, and so it would be impossible to have a fruitful conversation without that. And that too, I think, is where the focus on skills becomes as important as the focus on content, because AI is moving so quickly that what we actually need is for students to have the skills they need to be sophisticated consumers, rather than students to know how to use ChatGPT 2, which has already been overrun by ChatGPT 4.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you. My question is, will there be any cross-disciplinary integration to reinforce the financial literacy concepts?
So we're thinking about this, as I mentioned, both from a social studies lens with some of the econ standards that we included in the new social studies standards. And we're also thinking about it from a math and science perspective. The team that we have working on the standards development under Megan in our division of teaching and learning team is purposefully a cross-disciplinary. So we have our science specialist, our math specialist, and our social studies specialist actually doing the financial literacy drafting, our equity specialist leading our outreach, and Megan running the project management. And that is by design rather than by default, because in order to actually live for students, financial literacy needs to be informed by each of those disciplines.
Thank you. Now we'll go to the next step. Alex, is this you?
You should know this. Yeah.
All right, yes, this is me. Thank you all for having me back. Appreciate it. I'm glad the tomatoes weren't thrown at me the first time. So very similar to Megan, I just wanted to start with some reminders, just context setting. This is the working timeline and kind of the work ahead. This should look familiar to you all. We shared it with you in July. The dates are by and large the same, maybe some small tweaks here and there with, numbers 9, 10, I think with like the survey and things like that. And also taking into account, I know Representative Reed last time suggested having the public facing survey being kind of open through the whole duration of the fall engagement session. So we've made sure that's in there. But yeah, so just wanted to make sure that this is here, and we'll continue to use this as we're tracking the work through the months ahead. As Andrew indicated at the beginning, really this presentation is going to focus, I think, on two things. One is an update for you all on the current work of the 2023 DC School Report Card. What is happening so that by December of this year, there is a report card online, and then also making sure that we align on the 2024 engagement work for the report card that will be designed for 2024 and beyond, enhancements for that, aligning on the sessions, sharing with you all the work or the final public facing survey that we plan to disseminate to. Next slide. Background, I think, again, this is all contextual. You all should, or hope the state board does have authority, again, to approve the categories and the format of the DC School Report Card. So just as a reminder, the categories and format, the report card again remains a public facing website, and it is a warehouse that presents information related to items that the state board has approved in the state ESSA plan, as well as the other SBOE approved data elements. And then I think I said this last time, but the current version of the DC School Report Card presents information that's related to a resolution that the state board approved in 2018 related to categories, format, content. And so that is currently what the report card is being built on through 2023. And obviously the engagement going into 2024 will be around what enhancements or what changes could happen. Next slide. I'm not going to get into all this, but I think it was Representative Williams asked some questions last time related to federal requirements for report cards. And so just wanted to share, so USC, the Department of Education does issue guidance, and their guidance does note that quote, state report cards must include information on the description of and results from the state accountability system. Again, the state accountability system is the one that the state board approved in the summer of last year. Their guidance also notes a number of other categories that should be included on the state report card. Again, I will not read all those to you, but there's a list of areas that the Department of Ed notes. Other important things to call folks' attention to is that state education agencies like OSSI do have the ability to kind of put information on the report cards that they feel will best inform parents, students, and other members of the public really about the progress of elementary and secondary schools. And so just wanted to share all that with you. Okay, next slide. And so now we're going to transition to some updates on the DC School Report Card website. This first part is going to be about kind of the 2023 version, and then we'll shift into 2024. We did want to first share, and Representative Patterson may know this best, but in 2018, when the state board passed SR 18-3, we actually contracted with an external vendor to help us build out the original DC School Report Card website. That contract with the vendor that obviously OSSI previously had has since ended, and we are now transitioning that work internal to OSSI. And so the website will no longer be housed with an external vendor, but is going to be housed internally with DC government. With that shift and with the COVID pandemic, last year there were some things that we started proactively shifting, but in doing so, it resulted in a temporary kind of 1 year school level PDF files for each school last year. And you folks may remember that last year's school report card was a little bit different, again, due to the shift away from the external vendor, moving internal, as well as also the COVID pandemic. And so now we are kind of in, if you will, kind of like a 2-year project of sorts, where this first year with 2023 is we're working to move everything internally to a DC government housed website. And really working on designing that skeleton, that infrastructure that is going to be the basis for what will be the 2024 DC School Report Card. Again, that skeleton and infrastructure, just to remind folks, and those content and format elements are ones that were approved by the state board in 2018. I will note that as we are moving it internally, like if there were things that we knew were not really working or like smaller technical tweaks that we can, that not me, but that the CIO team can do, they are, I think, fixing those bugs now proactively. But we are really excited about the internal DC government website and how it will function moving forward. So just wanted to share that all with you. So now into the current work on the DC School Report Card. Again, just some reminders, it does remove the star rating. We have added a growth metric for high school. There's increased amount of information related to educator data. And in the new DC government house website, there'll be a little bit more dynamic such that there will be some more disaggregation of demographic and student groups, better presentation of historical and comparative trends, and some hover over descriptors for when you're looking at data, again, just like from the user accessibility. And then the pages will all be accessible in all 6 DC language access languages. So users will be able to go to the page immediately, select the language that they want, and everything automatically translates. Again, those are some features that will be really, really nice. What we did want to do right now is share some of the mock-ups and features, both in a video format as well as a static format for you for 2023. I think the last time some folks had asked to kind of see what was going on so that we can think about the basis for how this work is happening. And so we're going to attempt to play this very short 1-minute video that my colleague Ben Teich put together. There is some voiceover audio, and so if it works, that's great. If not, we'll watch it and then I can voice over after.
Are you doing the voiceover?
I'll do that. Yeah. Just watch it once, then we'll play it again. Try again. It's okay. So the video is in the PowerPoint deck for you all to view, and you can hear the voiceover. But what my colleague Ben did in it was he shows kind of the search function. So there's a search bar when you land on the page. You can type in, an LEA, a school. It'll pull up the information. I think in this example, Ben starts with typing in DCPS. It pulls up all the DCPS schools. You can filter by grade, by ward. You can see DCPS on its own. And then I think Ben chooses one particular DCPS school and just kind of quickly scans through what the individual school level page looks like. As you look at the video, I'll remind folks that there are some gaps and things that are missing because it's being actively developed. And so things are kind of missing because it's being updated in real time. And then Ben does the same thing, I think, for a KIPP school as well, or the KIPP LEA, and then going into that. Another really nice thing, we can go to the next slide, Andrew, is I think when we start on the kind of the main landing page, what you'll see is you have the ability to kind of search. You also have the ability to kind of like select the indicator or the area of focus that is of most interest to you. And so there are some tiles as well, clickable topic boxes. If academic growth is the most important to you, you can click on that one. Or if finance or teacher and school leader data is the most important, then you can click on those to get to those particular data sets. If you'd like to look at the data that way, or if you'd rather do it at an LEA or a school level. Again, there's language accessibility as well. So next slide. As you continue to drill down into the website, you can get the pages that are like DC overall pages. And so that would be for all the schools in DC, all the LEAs, and that would aggregate all of the data amongst those various topics. Again, lots of collapsible panes and topic boxes so that users can click in and out and figure out what data is the most important to them. Next page. This is a screenshot of the LEA page. And so, whether you chose DCPS or whether you chose KIPP, you would be able to see all the schools under it. You could then filter down by particular, as I said before, I think grade or ward level as well. And then this very last screenshot just shows a overview of what a school level page would look like. I think I noted that some of the things on here, there's gaps because it's being actively worked on, but there's hover over features where you can like hover over a bar and it'll tell you what the information is, and collapsible panes. So if you don't want to see everything at once, you can close down to what's of most importance to you. So that is where we are with 2023. Again, we are, as I said, we've moved away from the external vendor, moving into an internal DC government house website, and really working to build out kind of the skeleton and the infrastructure so that we know with the 2024 version, we're ready to go. So on 2024 DC school report card, I think as Andrew said, we're really excited to be here to kind of talk about alignment, collaboration around engagement sessions. When we presented in July, we discussed co-hosting 3 topic-specific public engagement sessions over the next 3 months. I noticed on the agenda that you all are planning to talk about kind of your fall engagement. So really hoping that there's going to be some good overlap there. We can identify some dates. But as of right now, we see something where there's a September one, an October one, and November one. In September, on the topic of what content should the DC school report card include, really asking folks what they like, what they don't like, what's missing. In October, thinking about how should the report card display the summative score. And then in November, really pulling everything together, thinking about the visual elements and the features of the report card, what might be missing. Maybe there's more sorting or filtering or comparative features that we'd like to add that are not currently part of it. And so thinking about those things. And so that's on the engagement sessions. And then the last piece that we have is on the launch of the public facing survey. It is my understanding that I think you all got I think Director Butler is holding it up. a draft version of the survey. And so we aim to have the survey go live by, I have Saturday, September 9th, because I think that's when you guys are going to the Nats game. But then I heard Sunday the 10th. So by the 10th, we want it to be ready to go for you guys to be able to bring or have at the, no, you don't want to.
No, it's
Oh,
not that
okay.
we met with the Nationals.
Okay.
There are limits to what you can and cannot bring inside the National
Okay.
Stadium, and they don't, like, thousands of
Okay.
individual pieces of paper.
Okay.
For LA Dodgers game, it's not
Okay.
what they have in mind for litter purposes.
We could also
Like just like
print
print out like
a-
one QR code that
QR
people can
code.
scan.
We will have those bags,
Okay,
and that bag has a QR code.
okay,
If you can have what you need to go to that QR code for that bag, they will get that.
okay,
So I would say we can connect you with our team.
okay.
I don't know where that QR code goes. I think it goes to our website. So there's a link that we can put on our website or
Okay.
something like
All
that.
right.
That
But
will
we-
probably
yeah.
be most helpful.
Yeah, so I know we were working
A lot
under,
of planning to
Yeah.
get that done.
but we do hope that the survey can go live by this weekend so that you all can use it at the Nats game, because we know there will be a lot of people coming in and out, and a great way to interact with people and engage with people. As per Representative Reader suggested, we are going to have the survey open through November 2023. And the survey and its questions mirror what we're imagining the engagement sessions to look like. And so kind of the similar types of questions that will be asked, the topics, so that if you are able to attend an engagement session, you can add more feedback into the survey, or if you're not able to attend the engagement sessions, you can complete the survey instead. The survey is relatively short. It's about 5 to 10 minutes in length at max. And, you know, again, it does break down based on the various sessions that we have. So please review the handout. If you have any questions, I know there's a tight timeline between now and Saturday and Sunday. And I know once it is final, I think we are going to make sure that it's translated too. So I think that was my last slide.
I know members will have questions. So I'm just gonna do 2 quick things that give people a moment to gather their thought. I did have a question regarding the financial literacy survey. If you can send it, if Andrew can send it to me, we will get that out on our social media so that folks can have it. And secondly, in terms of this survey and having it out, while again, it is a very quick turnaround, and a lot of the planning for that is already done. If we cannot accommodate this weekend, as I mentioned in my ED report, we do have mailers that are scheduled to go out in the mail inboxes to actual humans who have kids. So that, and we already have a QR code on there. So we were thinking about what we could use that QR code for, because we didn't want it to be duplicative of information that's already on the mailer. That is also an opportunity. I think it may be better for us to discuss additional options if it cannot make it to the baseball game on Sunday, because those are thousands of DC resident households directly who will get the mailer. So there's an option for deeper enhanced collaboration there. Those are my only 2 things in terms of logistics and coordination. And I'll turn it over to members to ask their specific
We're
content
gonna
questions.
have 10 minutes for questions. If we need. Representative Henderson, Representative Beth, Representative Reed. Is anybody that doesn't want to ask a question? All right, so let's just start with Representative.
Thank you. So I think I see some indication of where you're going on this, but I think at the last meeting, Representative Williams was asking about like what's required. And you brought back some response. Could you just speak specifically to the requirement, your interpretation of the requirement to display a summative score?
So federal law requires a number of things to be included on the state report card, including a description of the accountability system, the methodology for how accountability scores are calculated, the identification of CSI schools, and exiting criteria for CSI schools. We must publicly provide summative score information, but federal law does not explicitly require placing a summative score on each school's report card profile. However, ASI does not believe that it makes sense to provide all this information, currently believe that it makes sense to provide all this information about how scores are calculated and then not provide the score. It seems a bit like hiding the ball. And just, we really value transparency. plus fun fact, if we did that, there would be individuals or organizations out in DC who could go ahead and release their own version with the scores calculated, but it wouldn't have the authenticity or transparency of having the SEA website have that information. Further, the impetus behind the report card requirement in ESSA in ESSA is it's written right at the top of the provision in the legislation is to present information on the accountability system in a way that is easily understandable for parents. So if we're required to put scores in Excel spreadsheets instead of on the report card, the result is that the parents with the most access to information, the most resources, those that might have Excel on their computer, they're going to be the most advantaged in terms of having access to this very valuable information. And those parents furthest from opportunity will be disadvantaged by hiding this information, which presents equity concerns. However, all that being said, we recognize that the top of the school profile page may not make the most sense for this information because there are so many other pieces of valuable information for parents as well. So maybe parents' number one information or need is to identify an instructional specialty, like STEAM schools. Like I want my kid to go to a STEAM school. At this point, we don't know. That's why it's really important for us to partner to hear from as many families as possible about what is valuable for them and not just the traditional education wants. Like we really want to hear from all the families that we can. So I think the mailers and if possible, the baseball game would be fantastic. And once we've heard from district families, we'll be in a better position to make a decision on the presentation of that summative score information.
I'd like to add on to the discussion we had with the policy committee last week. That in the approved accountability amendment, it does say that it will put the summative score on our footprint. So we are not in a position right now to be making changes to this, and if we wanted to, we might send it back to the recommendation and get them to approve it again. And so this is if the accountability amendment from it's on the 26th. The DC's annual accountability regulation will calculate a school level score as well as a school level student group score to assist the identification of schools and comprehensive targeted support designations and will be reported on the DC school report. So this is the amendment that the state board voted and approved last year, and then the census recommendation and then was approved, and now we're working on to build out like the format as well as additional metrics and all that other stuff, but we can't change these things right now without sending it back to Department of Education.
That's absolutely correct and a really good point. Was speaking to the federal requirements and law, but in the state plan itself, it does include it. So that's a great point. Thank you.
Representative Reed.
Thank you. First, last year we didn't have data points related to whatever. We had PDFs. It did not have the summative score posted. And I'm curious about what was the impact of that? Were there lessons learned? And then linking it to like, did you all notice any trends with the DC school report card not having that? What's it? Number one. Question number 5 about kind of pops up. Have you ever participated in the DC school lottery? That pops up in the conversation related to DC school report cards. I wonder if it would be like a subsequent piece added to the question related to like, did it inform your decision at all? Like, or maybe it's like a step like after the yes, no, then you know they hit no or yes. It goes into like how did you use that information? And the last one, Andrew, your comment about the outside groups might create their own scores. Perk my ears up because I'm still not a fan of reporting it, but I find it a scary place that can happen. However, I had to keep thinking that currently happens now because I know a couple parents have come and testified about they're in the website. I can't remember. I know redlining is not in the table, but it's redlining. There is currently a website that parents do use some information, and I'm curious, like, how does OSSI currently combat that? So those are my 3 questions. Thank you.
I think
Hi, everyone. My name is Kelly Scholl. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Data Assessment and Research. I can take the first question on lessons learned related to the PDFs. We did the PDFs for the past 2 school years while we were operating under the addendum to the state plan in the midst of COVID. I think our biggest lesson learned is that schools are dynamic places and PDFs are not dynamic. Like a principal will change and we would be like back to square one, rerunning the PDF. And so we want to be able, while we only refresh the data once a year, we want to be able to keep this a fresh resource for parents and have the dynamism of schools reflected in that. The other piece that I would share is, really the PDF in its format made it hard to share like, so what, like, what does this mean? How does this compare to other schools? You would have like 6 PDFs open and try to compare all the middle schools you're thinking about. And it did not have any historic data on it. And so, is 30% good? Is 30% bad? I don't know. There's no comparison to whether the school is improving or not. And so being able to provide more context on a more robust website is another feature that I'm excited about.
We have 5 minutes. Representative Williams, Representative Best.
Yeah, they're pretty simple. I get an email.
Representative Williams.
Sure. So yeah, I guess I'll just ask them kind of more rapid fire because our time is limited. So for question 15, in section 4, like I'm wondering if like we can clarify for the public that the summative score is not a measure of school quality. Because oftentimes it is, whether or not it's presented that way, it's perceived when we rank schools, and the bar here with an accountability percentile goes against the recommendations of the board with the dashboard on previous resolutions. So I think it's worthwhile to eliminate that because it can mislead the public in thinking about what the score is actually intended to do and its purpose. So the picture does not match the section that and the descriptor. So that'd be my first piece. I don't know if anyone wants to respond to that.
I do just on the going against the recommendations from the board previously. I think you could be conflating when the board previously passed resolution that was in reference to STAR, in which we mutually agreed upon to eliminate, and we in fact did eliminate from the state accountability plan. What we're talking now is the display of summative score information, not a rating, not a single summative rating, which is I think the resolution that you're referencing. And so the ESSA amendment that the state board passed, in fact, actually explicitly stated that OSSI will engage the public and the state board on the presentation of any summative score on the report card. So just want to, I think that's still a conversation, but definitely open to wordsmith. Like I don't want to provide you an answer right now on like what the right wording here is. Happy to think with the team more about that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and I appreciate that. I think I was coming from a place of thinking about the dashboard work that, SR 22-1 and 22-4 had set, and kind of why we were moving away from the STAR framework generally, right? And I think that kind of like undermines the whole intent of the work of the board in previous years. And then I just want, with my final question and looking for clarity. So I think it was slides 18 and 17. So I just want to clarify this. There was a line here that says an SEA, so OSSI, right, may include on its state report card any other information it believes will best inform parents, students, and other members of the public. So are updates permitted after the state board votes on the categories and format of the report card? So you're gonna give us in December, right, what the format and the categories look like. Is that accurate?
No. So just and maybe the best thing is if you look back at SR 18-3, I think is what the number is, I can't recall. But there is an appendix attached to it. And what OSSI did when that resolution was passed was there was an appendix that said these are the data elements that OSSI is going to put on the report card. And like this is a descriptor of them, and this is why they're going on there. And that was passed by the state board. It was given to OSSI, and then it was OSSI's job to use that list of data elements and turn it into the DC score report card.
So it would only pertain to those specific data elements in 18-3.
For 2023, we are just, for the 2023 score report card, we are working off of what the state board approved in 2018. Until the state board approves any other changes to the content and format, we still are defaulting to what was approved in 2018.
And I guess I'm sorry, I just want to help you out. So I think there's a tactical, so like the 2023 report card that we are currently in, they're basing that off whatever the board passed in 2018. What goes in 2024 is what you all get to help decide. That will be in the next resolution. Is that not correct?
But we
haven't decided that yet.
But we're sharing the 2023 stuff now because it's, I think, like a skeleton infrastructure of what we're going to be building the 2024 version off of. And I think just so that there's something to build from. And I think,
So I guess my question is why? Why are we bound by what the state board did in 2018 when there were additional resolutions in 2020?
Because you have to approve the categories and formats, and there was not a resolution put forward from OSSI for the state board to approve new categories and formats.
Right, we just did metrics before.
Correct. The last time that
We didn't do design.
Representative Best.
Yeah, so I want to follow up with what Representative Williams stated, and I know that it was already voted on, but I just want to make sure that from an equitable stance, I've voiced my opinion on the negative impact that I believe that some of the scores have on our communities. The impact on property values, teacher placement and recruitment, as well as the negative stigmatization, which discourages enrollment in our schools. So I think that if we are planning on doing that, I would just want to make sure that it's not something that is right at the very top, because I do personally believe that it has a negative impact on our communities, especially on our schools. So I just wanted to share that that component. And I know that said that we can't do anything about it. I don't know if I subscribe to that yet. And so I just wanted to share that.
Representative Patterson.
Yeah, and I'll try to be brief. First of all, I want to compliment my fellow Ward 8 representative for saying that after number 5, I would like to know how that is used. I don't think you answered her question as far as how my school DC, like how the report card is used to rate kind of your schools. Are you actually using it? I think that information is relevant because I think there's a lot of just conversation like taking for granted that it's being used. The report card automatically is used to rate schools in the My School DC lottery. So I want some type of question, as she stated, to be there to like supplement number 5, to say, did you use the report card to list your schools, to rate, to so to speak, rate your schools in the numbers that you did, the 1 through 12. That's first and foremost. Secondly, been here for a while, since the task force. So I've watched this go through all the iterations, all the conversations, everything like that. So this specifically around the summative score. And I remember the conversations and the votes that we had. And I shared them with you, sir. My biggest thing is that I think we do need to have a summative score. And again, as we debated thoroughly in the last iteration of the board, is that where it goes is very important and how it is stated is very important. That was the biggest debate when we made the vote during the last iteration of it, 2022-1, SR 22-4, I believe, or whatever it was. And so want to make sure that however we use that summative score, that it does not indict a school, and I said this over and over again, but actually shows where school needs support as an indicator, like this school needs support. I know it's used for the bottom 5%. And that's why we have a summative score, so you can identify the bottom 5% that needs and receives support, additional support. But how we display that is what we discussed a lot, and kind of crafted everybody's vote. How that is done, we want to be very sensitive to that and intentional about it. Thank you.
I'm so sorry. I did forget one last thing. My question was actually, what is the difference between a star rating and a rating as a percentage or a number? So if we're saying like if one is a 3, 2, 4, 5 versus a 70, 60, 80, what is the actual difference between the two?
So we had a long conversation about this in the previous iteration of the state board. There's a summative rating where it's like 5 stars or 5 apples or 5
Colors.
trees, whatever, versus a score, which is a component of the accountability system, which again is required under federal law, which again, then Kelly can go into more details there about, but there's a difference there between a summative rating and a summative score. So hopefully that is.
But wouldn't you use that summative score to create that rating?
Yeah, may I answer?
Oh,
If I may, when we talked about this, just to give you some background, and when we talked about it, we definitively talked about what a rating is and what a score is. And the score kind of like, we did the metrics, and because of what each metric is weighted on, you come up with a score, as opposed to a rating, which is basically 1 through 5 or whatever the case may be. And we said, going forward, and this is where the discussion came about the dashboard, is how we would display kind of like the score, how they were moving. So it didn't come across like, oh, you only got a 3, or you only got a 2, or you'll never be able to move from a 1-star school to, a 5-star school. So we really try to break down what's the difference between what a rating is, of rating a score, and what a score is based on the metrics that we're evaluating. And we put weight on each one of those metrics. And so that's what that's being pulled from.
And I'd like to make 2 final points. So
Okay, no, we're
we
out of,
have them once a month and.
I understand that, but you've had.
10 minutes is insufficient. I mean, that's a part of a public official is to engage with our
Okay, but
agents.
I didn't get a chance to ask my.
So now we'll jump back in the queue, but I felt like we were gonna shut this down and that's not okay.
We have a time frame.
The agenda should not be weaponized.
You've mentioned that before. Seems to me that what we are talking about, that we want, is that it's not the fact that there's a summative score, which determines the bottom 5. All right, just like in sports, the teams that have the worst records get the first draft choice. To try to be equitable, to try to gain whatever. All right. What we don't want, I think, and I'll speak for us, is we don't want, because I knew that when it first started with the star rating, that Cardozo's was never going to get anything but a 1 because of test scores. And so what we've worked on is trying to make test scores not the determining factor in what a school looks like. And I think that's what we will work with together to try to make sure that the report card that comes out in 2024 is something that reflects what happens in the school buildings every single day. That education is going on and that we are pulling those students who don't have the skills up, and that the system will provide that kind of support for those students. So that eventually the students who are at the bottom 5 aren't there anymore. And maybe we'll get a system where the bottom 5 are we're getting 3 stars. All right, because there's always going to be a bottom to whatever. All right. You have 1 minute.
Thank you. So yeah, 1 statement and then 1 question. So the statement for just level set us as a board, to what you had said, Mr. Goff, if I heard you right, was that the summative score does not need to be presented on each individual school profile, correct? Right.
But according to federal law, but
it doesn't. That needs to be presented for the sole purpose of identifying the schools that need additional support. The amendment that OSSI submitted to the Department of Ed does not say that it needs to be reported on each specific school profile. And anything I would like to see in writing, anything that shows that it needs to be, because what you had said earlier was that it doesn't. And the amendment that Kathleen read does not say that. So I would like to avoid the confusion so we can have a more substantive conversation, a more informed conversation. And that gets at my next question was, the whole point of the report card is to drive school improvement. So I'm curious, kind of bigger picture, how is OSSI going to develop a plan so that we get schools targeted support in using the school report card? Because creating the school report card is great, but how we use it is actually what's going to make a difference.
Okay, thank you.
Just real quick, 1 minute. Alex, thanks for the presentation. I really like it. I think I probably aligned that shot with Jacques' remarks in terms of that some of this support could be useful, but it's got to be presented in a way that's fair, balanced, and has the information. From my perspective, it should be about informing parents about the type of information they find useful in assessing which school is the best fit for their kids. And I think that's what I'm going to try to find out from my constituents is what do they want to see in there that would help them make an informed choice about the school that they want to send their kids to. So appreciate your work. Look forward to working with you.
Thank you for this presentation. For taking the time to answer questions from the state board members, and we'll have many more. And we want to work with you to get the answers. The board looks forward to continuing to work with OSSI on updating the report card and the financial literacy standards. Thank you again. At this time, we're going to pause for a 5-minute break. And what time is it?
If you all could let me know when the latest and the deadline to get you survey feedback, we will communicate that to members tomorrow. So please let me know as soon as possible when to get your feedback.
We'll be discussing dates for engagement sessions by any chance. We were hoping to either maybe last week of September or early. I mean,
What we are discussing are not dates connected to you.
Okay.
So if there are specific dates that you want for engagement around the items that you've laid out here, you need to send a plan or just put it to the executive state board.
Okay.
So if that means at Monday's meeting, there you have some potential dates you'd like to share with the state board around those 3 areas, like you laid out in September, October, November. Then I would say, bring those suggestions. I do not think the state board has specific, like they haven't talked about those 3 dates in particular. And I do know there needs to be joint communication. So I'm trying to figure out how we facilitate that joint conversation around those 3 entities. So if everyone has agreed upon the topics that they've shared for those September, October, November, then we can think about dates.
yeah, just if we are going to do a September one, obviously sooner would be great, but appreciate your time. And
But we will
Yeah.
have to add that to our engagement discussion, but we're discussing something different. Yeah.
thank you.
We will be back at 6:30.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's all right.
We-
The state board will now continue its discussion of its fiscal year 2025 need for appropriations and related enhancements to align with the mission of the three offices of the state board. The Office of the State Board of Education, the Office of the Ombudsman for Public Education, and the Office of the Student Advocate to support their programs and initiatives.
All right, thank you all for joining us. There's a handout that the team will be sharing with our need for appropriations on it. But to give a summary, so we did meet at the admin committee to talk about the need for the enhancement requests from members and what came in. So the team is handing those out now, but the summary is on the slide. Of the enhancement requests, there was a total of 9 FTE requests and 3 infrastructure requests. And so to break down, the ombudsman was 5 FTEs, SBOE 4, the Office of Student Advocate 1, 3 infrastructure, capital improvement funds for office remodel, and then OSA, OMB, quick base funding. What you have that has just been handed to you is a summary of those things. We have not gotten any of the official submission forms from the mayor's office. So we took the forms that they gave us last year and the categories that which they asked for to create this document. And this is what we got from, we took what we got from members, what we got from staff, and what we got from OSA and OMB and put it in writing for everyone to see. This is also should be on the Dropbox, but this is just a draft, but there's been no final decisions made on the enhancement request. But I want to give you all an opportunity to take a look at this, to ask any questions, and then we can talk about the explicit next step, because this is not necessarily what will be voted on. And I say this because the question around what happens with the SPED hub will be covered in our Monday meeting with the Office of the State Superintendent. We were not able to meet with them in August because they were not meeting with external partners during the month of August as they prepare for the start of the new school year. So this is our first opportunity to meet with them on this coming Monday to talk about the SPED hub. All of the descriptions that you see for the first set of SBOE, I help author those justifications. The other descriptions were written by members of OSA and Ombudsman staff to describe their enhancement requests. So I'll give you all a few minutes, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions and to talk about next steps and what happens.
I cheated and read this earlier, but this looks great. Just thanks for being proactive on it and really getting ahead of this process. I think that's going to help us go a long way on it. The only thing I would add is just if we can, when we get our students in place, we can get a chance to talk with them and just see if there's anything collectively they as a group, would like to request this enhancement. I know they're not seated yet, but just something more, some small pot of money for our youth to be able to put into some sort of action initiative to bring them all together and pushing that. I'd like to see that if we could do it. But if it's going to be driven by them, it would be good to hear from them what they think first. I know that may be hard to get in line with this process. So just this looks great, and thanks for your work on it.
Are there any questions about any of these things?
I do have a question. So what did I write a justification for?
You talked about the SPED hub.
Yeah, the enhancement.
Yeah, so there's one that about the SPED hub here so I didn't write that description. That was forwarded to the ombudsman, and this is the description that they put into the form.
Okay,
Yeah, because we can't have.
Why did I have to do that work if it was gonna be reworked? It just seemed like a process thing that was. So what's gonna happen with these pieces? Is the conversation on Monday about the independence of the SPED hub, and this is just the staff of SPED hub?
I think they're just discussing what is the strategy, whether or not what OSSI plans to do or not do. Because right now we just haven't had any kind of conversation with OSSI during the month of August because they said they weren't able to meet with us.
Right.
So this would be the initial conversation with Dr. Grant and her team to talk about what, if any plans or designs they had or not, because we honestly haven't spoken to them about it yet. And it may be that we just, I mean, I don't want to speculate. I don't want to put something out there that's not be, but honestly, we just haven't spoken to them. But if there's a
Gotcha.
particular
And I
strategy.
appreciate Ossie's role in this. I also want to keep iterating as much as possible. And I understand that the hub just needs something funded. So I'm not gonna be a stickler of like, if there's the only way that the hub can be funded is through Ossie. But I really want to push that if we can to keep the hub independently funded and operated, because one of the roles for state education, like you can do a state level complaint for special education where it's like, I'm tired of like an issue right now is buses and we can do a state level complaint. Aussie staff are not gonna tell folks like, yes, you can do a state level complaint. I mean, I'm not saying that they won't, but that's kind of like, I think there was a reason why the hub was brought up for sure for independence, and it just looks a little weird for the state education agency to be fully running that because of all the prongs of the special education due process of where the options that you can take. One of the options that you can take is against the state. So they may or may not advise. And it puts the staff member in a really uncomfortable position to be like, yes, do that. And I'm also employed. Yeah. So we don't know if they have plans to take it over or not, or they have not made any indication of that. But I know that President Thompson's hand up, but I will say that we'll make your feelings known about it. Because I think when we present like what the board would have happened, that's what Vice President Leary and President Thompson will discuss. Because for all we know, that they'd be like, we will support your enhancement. Like, we just have no idea what the conversation is going to be yet. Yeah, and I'm not saying like Aussie's coming in like adversary. I just want to put it out there that I believe the hub was created as an independent mechanism for a reason. And that's because a lot of times parents call and they get Aussie answers, which, yeah, so they need to call.
That's very helpful. I wish you had been at our leadership meeting yesterday. Just because
I wasted on mic a couple of times.
No, the thing is
and wrote an email.
The thing is that what we're looking for with our meeting on Monday is information about what is going to happen with it. Because the sped up money disappears at the end of
September 2024.
September 24.
That's what we talked about last working session.
Right. Yeah. So that's why that's one of the major things we're talking about on Monday.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I know President Thompson had her hand up. Oh, go ahead. But she sent me a text because I guess we didn't see her online. So
President Thompson.
Yeah, sorry, it was more of a clarification. So, and I think some of this has been covered, but I'm hoping it's helpful in connecting the dots. As Director Butler stated, we have not talked with Aussie about what's happening with the SPED Hub. The purpose of the meeting on Monday, in addition to just being our regularly scheduled meeting with Aussie, is to see if Aussie had any plans for requesting the funding, or if we were the only ones planning to request funding. The funding currently does come through Aussie. I don't think we were planning to have a discussion about any changes to the, I don't know if independence is the right word, but like the goal would be to replace the ESSER funding with local funds, not to change how the SPED Hub is managed. The only question is if Aussie had already planned to request the local funds on the SPED Hub's behalf, and it would be continued to be operated through the MOU, or if we as the state board would request the full amount for the SPED Hub, which means we would not have an MOU with Aussie. It would continue to run through the ombudsman's office. And we would also be seeking Aussie's support and saying like, yes, this has been, so it's to say like, yes, make the case and all the things given the tight fiscal climate. So the goal is really to figure out which of the two of us are going to request the local funds, and if they had any plans, because they've not actually indicated to us as leadership that they were planning on requesting the local funds.
Thank you. Representative Williams.
I just want to briefly say that President Thompson, I appreciate that clarification, and I support and share Representative Reed's concern about maintaining that in the purview of the state board for the sake of being and amplifying the public's voice on issues related to special education.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I just want to
Representative.
echo that. I thought that that's what came out of our last working session discussion. Representative Goulet, I want to say Representative Patterson, like we all spoke in support of moving to that independent or making sure that it was funded locally and independently.
True.
Okay, so I'm hearing two things. So are you asking board leadership, President Thompson and Vice President O'Leary to go a step further and not only clarifying OSCE's intention to seek funds from the MOU, or are you all, and to be very explicit, but not only do you want to seek local funds, that you do not want it funded even through local funds through OSCE MOU at all? Because I'm hearing two different things, and I just want to be clear on what the final thing is.
I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. The reason the ombudsman's office brought up this as an enhancement and through the enhancement process is because enhancements are things that are not covered in the budget currently. It will not be covered because there are no local funds. So we have to request local funds. Somebody has to request local funds. For us, we actually are operating on an MOU with OSCE, but it's OSCE's funds. It's OSCE's ESSER funds. And so there are no changes that like, I do think there is I don't know what Dr. Grant is going to say back to us. I would assume that OSCE is supportive of the SPED Hub continuing. I don't know if I am concerned about making sure that we find local funds from somewhere to be able to cover the positions as we've been through, at least this board, one budget season together, knowing things are getting tighter and tighter. So like the enhancements question is a question of existence at this point. So I just want to put that on the table. The question around independence, I want to better understand, because currently OSCE, like it is independent by virtue of the MOU through OSCE, like we run it. So there's no deferring to OSCE. It's not OSCE staff that give the responses, like the things that have been brought up around what OSCE will and will not do are important. But the reason that's not happening is because the ombudsman's office is independent. So there's no scenario that we would be presenting where the SPED Hub is not in the ombudsman's office, like because the ombudsman is an independent entity.
Yes, yes. I think what I'm shooting for, the preference is coming through the ombudsman's office versus the MOU through the state. Yeah. And wasn't there something, didn't Representative Henderson bring up something about the ESSER funds when they run out? Like, isn't that a piece of, well, you mentioned, but we're shooting for local dollars, period.
Yeah, we need to replace those dollars with local dollars.
Right, and so when I'm sorry, just for clarity, when I say independence, I mean in like the ombudsman's office, independent of OSCE, because in the decision-making process, parents can decide they want a state level complaint, and I know it's what is it, ombudsman staff that are running the entity, but it's just kind of weird to have that flow through the MOU of the state education agencies. It seems like it should be something budgeted by the ombudsman's office. It was also the ombudsman at the time's idea.
Yeah, and I think that's what President Thompson's kind of saying, because the MOU was basically through OSCE, but as those ESSER funds, since they're going to be going away, everybody knows that. So all the FTEs and everything else that's tied to the administrative fees and stuff like that is, how is that now so that we can keep it the SPED Hub? How is that going to be done? I don't think that conversation has happened, is what everybody is saying, but we do understand that we want it to operate the way that it operates now that, the ombudsman is controlling it, it as an independence so that you can have integrity to reporting and things like that. I think that is still the goal. It's just now, how does that happen now that ESSER funds, which is a question I've been asking on every time, is like, you lose ESSER funding, it's going away. What are you going to do
Right.
with that particular initiative or anything like that? So I think there's no definitive answer at this particular time because they haven't had that conversation. So they're trying to have that conversation on how does that happen now that ESSER funding is not there.
Give them ombudsman local dollars.
And I just want to ask Michael, so do you think that anything inappropriate has happened so far with how it's run now and
I
the
just-
current
I know, like,
status?
to the term optics, I think it's bad optics for the state education agency to have it like the flow through the MOU. I'm not saying Austin's doing anything bad or anything like that. But I also know, I've heard one in a comment from an Aussie staff member that was like, it's our hub, and I'm like, well, yeah, sure, it's DC's hub, but it's not your hub. And I mean, also, it should be like, make sure as soon as possible, where if it's the ombudsman's idea, it came out there, like, can we get local dollars to come to the ombudsman? Or to the ombudsman, or to the MOU through Aussie.
As soon as we find out,
Yeah, well, my
On
thing is, I
Monday,
wanted to put this on my,
No,
so
no.
that we can make sure, because I don't know what happens in meetings that go on Monday, until we get the notes about a month later. So I just want to make sure that I understand.
So you'll get the information right away.
Thanks.
Any other questions about that?
Just a clarification. So the links to the meetings, all the leadership meetings are live. They are literally updated while we're in the meeting. So people can go in and look on Monday. I write a summary email once a month, but you will have all the links to all the meetings. So it'll be there on Monday.
Thank you. The state board has been working on plans to host a fall engagement series. This annual event allows the public to meet with board members and discuss topics and concerns under the state board's authority. Event details will be shared with the public in the coming weeks. The state board will take the next X minutes to further discuss engagement goals, agenda, and details.
What you all have,
Executive Director Butler.
what you all have on the screen and what is in front of you. And it's also on the website. So when I was thinking about the fall engagement session, we talked about before that it needs to have a purpose. It needs to not be very it needs to be more encompassing. So we took your goals that you all discussed at the last meeting, and so what this doesn't include, and the reason it says ideal timeline November, December, because I'd seen the Austin materials and they want to plan engagement sessions September, October, November. The state board does not have capacity to do both. It's either we're going to do the joint ones during September, October, November, and then do this in December, but we don't have the capacity to do them simultaneously. So that's why I think we say ideal timeline for this is November, December. But the design that we've been talking about on staff, potential title, what makes a DC school great, what matters most in DC schools. Again, echoing what I've heard from members in these sessions. The MLK library is currently available, but the sooner we just make a decision, the better. And we were thinking of something more of a co-sponsored event with some of these particular entities, obviously OSA and OMB as sister offices in our agency, but also the Student Advisory Committee, Board Education Councils, PAVE, Teachers Union, and Empowerhead. Because we wanted a large cross-section of people, and we also want to connect with education councils across the district. And I think that if we're able to do this, say, the first weekend in December, anything that we haven't heard from the engagements around the report card with OSSI, we're able to do a larger event where there's an opening kickoff session, and then we have maybe 3, again, I say limit to 3 sessions where people can, one rotation, so they get to see 2. And then we can do a lunch. And because this is a larger community event, we would be able to do a food waiver because it's open to the public type of event and not just like us sing closely. But thinking about the engagement like this, and so if we are thinking about potential topics, like so if you wanted to do something on teachers and mental health or school safety or financial literacy standards, like this is an opportunity to design a session that's interactive and gets you engagement and feedback from members of these groups and potential people that they can bring with them, all in one like kind of fell swoop. And so this is the suggestion, the ideal timeline. I do think as sort of a next piece of this conversation is what happens with the OSSI, what you all like to see happen with the suggestion OSSI has put forward for the DC report card engagement in terms of the 3 separate sessions around their 3 areas that they outlined. And if this is useful for a December type of event, which gives the staff more capacity and planning time, and ideally, I would assume that we will put this on the agenda for Monday's meeting with OSSI. If you all like the idea of those 3 sessions, then that is a shared workload between the state board and OSSI and not just the state board for those 3 sessions. But we just also haven't talked about what we have the content, we don't have what will be done in those 3 sessions. But again, that's more of a shared workload. And we really want to get your feedback on this design. Was this headed in the right direction? If this is more what you all were looking for, is this missing the mark? So forth and so on. That feedback would be helpful.
So that's my complete question is how much do we have input on the content, so to speak? I know the subjects and stuff like that they're talking about, but how much can we inform the content around those type of things? And would love to hear from my coach there is his thoughts on that as well. Seeing that it's around a report card that comes to our committee.
And so you're talking about the 3 engagement sessions with OSSI.
Right.
And so the question is, how much influence does the state board have on the content?
Yeah, on some of the content.
Okay.
I have the same wonder. I mean, I think with this issue, and I'm curious to other people's thoughts, like if we can actually effectively collaborate, and then I think we can drive turnout like in better ways. I think one of the lessons learned from for me from the social studies stuff was we had much better turnout virtually. And we had competing in some ways like events or like engagement sessions between what they were doing and what we were doing. And I don't think it's helpful for the public to have those separate events. So assuming that we're able to have some say over the structure of how they're organized and are able to have access to feedback surveys, you know, I think it might be useful for promoting a richer discourse.
And this is around the report card for the 3.
Right, the sessions, right? We want to work smarter, not harder.
So I guess my next question is, if we can communicate with them that the board is interested in doing these 3 engagement sessions, but we want to confer on, and I think at this point, it has to be like a commitment. I don't know if it's the 2 chairs of that particular committee working with the representatives from OSSI to help design those, if that's something we can suggest, because as the 2 co-chairs, I think you all and whoever the staff member is from the state board may be like the best group to work on thinking through with the OSSI staff who's planning on their end, what those engagement sessions would look like.
And we're fine with that because, you know, Mr. Jew's been on both sides. And so he gets both sides, so to speak. And so if we could just kind of, and it seems like he's the point for the report card. If we can just work with him on what that content and how those look and how they're structured and the agendas.
I can't promise you that.
I know you can't promise.
He's going to say he's the only person.
And I'm just, you know, kind of taking it for granted, but I'm saying if that's the person or whatever, whoever the person is, if we can kind of work with them on that so that we have an understanding and we get what we need out of it. I know they have certain things that they need out of it. Then we look forward to collaborating with them.
My question is for Representative 1 and 6. That in the questions that you raised for OSSI today, I'm curious who you think. In the questions you were naming to OSSI earlier today, I'm curious who you think, whose voices, I heard it implied in your questions, but whose voices do you think are missing in the feedback that we should be getting?
Just in general from what we saw. I mean, I think in general, I think we just need to get more. No.
And okay, I mean, my follow-up to that would be, is it because you are hearing things that you don't see as reflected in this, or because you think the actual polls that they shared aren't reflective of what you see is accurate, or
No, I just-
that we're
I was
missing?
just looking at the numbers. And
Gotcha.
it wasn't like a.
So you don't have a hypothesis necessarily that it would look drastically different with 200, 400, 500?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure, but I just know that the numbers,
The numbers are too low for you, and then do you have particular demographics that you want to reach?
I mean, I think that the report card, connects with a variety of person. I think principals, right, are one thing, because this is useful for schools to have some autonomy as to how their school is being portrayed. And I do think that having more family engagement is a challenge for both OSSI and the state board. So I think that's a shared goal. My bigger issue is how things are framed. And if things are framed in a way that educates the public on what they're accurately and what they're weighing in on, then I'm good with that, because what I have been hearing from Ward 1 across the city is different from how things have necessarily been presented to us from OSSI.
So
Does that answer your question?
if we're building this out together, I mean, it sounds to me like our goal number one should be, how do we get as many people to come out to this engagement session as possible? How do we get as many principals to come out as possible? I think each of us could, that's a relatively, we have our own networks within our wards, in addition to what the board already has. I think the hardest one for me is that third piece, right, of like, how do you get someone who's not already engaged in this conversation to share based on something they're seeing? I mean, I'm not even sure how we would ask that in a way that gets to the heart of
the
issue, right? Without, as an engagement, right? And who we would try to get to come out to have that conversation, because I think that shapes, to me, that shapes who from OSSI we ask to, and how we actually work on designing this, right?
Isn't, it seems to me, we had engagement sessions about social studies standards. And they were really good sessions, but there weren't very many people there. It seemed if OSSI wants to have dual engagement sessions, then we can't help but get more people with more publicity from both us and OSSI to come to a session. So it seems to me like a no-brainer as far as now, but we need to be able to control the dialogue. I think that was, the question was about. We need to have, and we've already got a model where we had input with the social studies standards, where we did work with them for that. So that's all we need to do, is to have the same kind of relationship for the report card. And then we'll be able to, because I don't think we're far apart from getting what we want on the report card, but we know what the stumbling blocks are. But I think working together with them on this and getting more people to come and be involved in the conversation is what we want. So it seems to me as though, we got to make sure that our committee has weight in the setting up of it. But we can't even get there if we don't agree to have the conversation. And if it works out and the three OSSI SBOE meetings work, then our engagement session in December.
Does it or does it not need to happen?
No, I think it would be fabulous, because then we can pull everything together. Say this is where we are and where we want to go. Now I'm assuming that OSSI is going to have food at their engagement session.
We have no idea how OSSI is
Okay,
thinking about.
Look,
But they could be doing virtual, like, I just don't know. We haven't had a conversation with them since the last time we talked. I mean, we've sent them stuff from you all, and they've sent stuff back via email, but an explicit conversation about what happens in these 3 engagement sessions, we have not had that conversation with them. But I think we have to have that conversation on Monday.
okay, from my perspective, is putting together events for 40 years, you gotta have food.
Always.
I'm sorry, I also want to make sure that it wasn't me saying like, I don't think that the research was like bad or anything like that. I just think that like, if we're, gonna use data and say like, we have these survey groups, that it's gotta be more than like 50 or 40 people.
No, I agree.
Yeah, that's all.
Are you using the financial?
Yeah,
literacy?
yeah, that's all. I think the way that they structured everything makes sense. So I just think that we just need to get going.
I think my only question is, are people on board with this other thing that we have to design here? Or do we need, I just haven't gotten like a concrete agreement to move forward or not, because I don't want to get the staff working on something and then you all are like, no, we only want to focus our energies on the 3 report card engagement, which is fine. I think that is a valid decision. We're okay with that. But I just want to be clear so that when we go back, we can tell people how to divvy up their time to execute things.
So we did before.
But I don't know if we necessarily did we partner before like that? I think that's the big thing, like, partnering. I think
who we're
that
partnering
is what is gonna.
And I like the group.
Oh, no, I'm fine
yeah.
with that. No, I'm saying the structures is that what we did before. Yeah, we didn't have partners, but those groups came.
Right. I like it, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, you like it, but do you want us to do it?
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
we like lots of things. I just want to be clear.
Yes, I like it. I personally would like to.
I do as well.
I like it. And are we still having the virtual option?
For the fall engagement,
Yeah.
not if we do this larger event, because I am thinking on a scale larger than, like, I think you was in a high school before. I mean, I would have goals and targets of hundreds of people and not less than 100 people.
Because we did MLK Library, then the last time we did the high school. That was the second time. And then we did a recreational center. But
So
we've
last
never
fall, there
done-
was 3.
No, I was saying that over my period of the 3 years on the board,
Oh,
the
okay.
first one was at Deanwood Rec, the second was at MLK, and the third was at Eastern.
Went to
But
Eastern.
we've never done a virtual one. I know Rep Chang and I have been mentioning virtual, and we've even volunteered our time, I was right, I think so, to have a virtual component. Now,
Is it possible? So would you like to shift this to a virtual event?
no, I mean, I think this
Okay.
person, yes, we're having person engagement, but I also think there's a virtual like interest. And there are some parents who literally say, I know one just popped right in my head right now. It was just like, I have my girl, I need a virtual option. She would participate more often. So there are groups. And when we did SS standards, we board a host or ed council hosted, and we had like maybe 30 people online. So
Could we
There's an
think
interest.
about a virtual as, not as an alternative, but as an addendum to this?
We can see
Maybe-
what are the
maybe-
virtual capabilities to have it. I mean, I can't promise you what can be live streamed and what can be engaged, and if we have the technology and money to do
I'd
that.
rather do fewer things well.
Yeah.
Dr. O'Leary. I think it adds a complexity to the whole thing that I'm
Well,
not sure what it
but
adds.
the concept that Representative Reed is talking about, I know that our ANC meetings during the pandemic, we had a lot of people come to ANC meetings that didn't come
that's not.
to the ANC meetings live.
And it literally could be, yes, in person is probably more engaging, but it literally could be taking the 3, whatever the PowerPoints from there is, and run the presentation. have it
Without we think that, my goal with there would not be 3 PowerPoints. Like,
Or
there
whatever.
would be activities and things that are more interactive.
We just want less work on y'all, because it seems like there's capacity issue. We just want to see if a virtual option can happen of some sort, and we've never tried it. So we're just
So we're
trying to
saying
do
that you and Representative Chang will own that with staff support? We can
Yes.
make that happen.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
We just need a Zoom link, right? And some PowerPoint. For whatever presentation happens there. So it'll happen after that.
Okay, so I will come back to you all with dates after we've settled on a date, so that it'll be after. And then whatever presentations are done or not, or activities, then connect those individuals and groups with you all for a virtual session.
President Abing's hand is up. right?
Yes, President Thompson's hand is up on the line.
President Thompson. President Thompson?
No, my hand was up some time ago. So it's fine. I'm happy for us to move on.
Okay. Thank you. All right, next on the agenda are committee reports. Each committee chair or co-chair will have at most 3 minutes to share, followed by 2 minutes for questions. And I'll do mine right. So Representative Best.
Yeah, so we did not meet, in August. However, I will be meeting with Dr. Fleischer, on Friday to continue to update our factor and develop the next steps. And we will be meeting at the end of this month, the fourth week of this month.
Thank you very much. Representative Williams or Patterson? Or
Yeah,
both?
I can keep it short too. Our committee also did not meet in August. We're currently in conversation to put a date out there for September. We're gonna continue to support the report card work and then also build off of the work that staff is doing with regards to the crosswalk around teacher turnover and retention, so that we can move that work forward later this month or in October.
Great.
I co-sign to that.
Thank you very much. The admin committee met yesterday and we were all there. Representative Patterson, Representative Chang, President Thompson, Executive Director Butler, Dan Davis, student advocate, and Tony Kreiner, the ombudsman. Construction is on schedule for the OSA and OMB office space, expected to conclude in late September, early October. We are all invited to come down and look at what's going on in the offices. The ombudsman and chief student advocate are working on their annual reports and preparing for their presentations at the November working session. The state board has submitted the position description for their new finance and operations coordinator to DCHR for certification. And OSA, OMB, and SBOE shared their enhancement request. You saw them. The changes were made, including all the positions initially laid out by the state board team and the special ed assistant ombudsman to be just an assistant ombudsman rather than a special ed assistant. The title has changed, the job description hasn't changed. And we'll meet with OSSI on Monday, as we told you. Representative Chang requested that the three agencies analyze their operations for what can be added and what can be also eliminated and prepare to discuss at the next admin meeting. Executive Director Butler will meet with Octo to explore agency-wide CRM possibilities. That's what is it? It's
Customer relation management system.
yeah, it's computerized stuff. The committee suggests we move an NFA resolution vote to October to include more time to evaluate enhancements and speak with OSSI regarding the special ed hub. And Tony will share the SPED hub spending report with the admin committee meeting, Tony Kreiner, the ombudsman. Any questions? No questions? Thank you very much. Next, on to our new business. I want to ask members if they have any additional items of new business to add to the following list: the Early Childhood Roundtable or panel, the letter regarding technology funding to the Chancellor, the SR 23 need for appropriations, SR 2310 working group for board bylaws and standard operating procedures, SR 2311 girls wrestling, SR 2312 selection of a representative to the School Safety Enhancement Committee. Are there any additions? Representative Williams.
Thank you. I have a question about if we're doing a panel or what the panel looks like for the September public meeting. So I'd like to add that to
For
the September public meeting.
panel for what?
We were talking about for the report card with their Or was that in October that we were planning?
They just said it later.
About the report card,
Right.
we have.
Yeah, wait, one second, I'm sorry. So the question is, would you like to add that to new business? So before we discuss, I think we have to add it to the agenda, Kathleen, so just one second.
Sorry for the confusion. Yes, I'd like to add that to the.
Okay,
So that's having a panel for the report card on our September
public meeting.
20th, is it the 20th? 20th public meeting. Okay, thank you. All right, so we're gonna go to the list. You have all of this information in your folder. The first is the Early Childhood Roundtable or panel, Executive Director Butler.
actually, I'm gonna shift to Representative Chang. This is the request that he emailed, leadership from me, and I told him that we will have a discussion about it at the session.
Yeah, remind me of one.
You emailed me. And I responded
Wait, what
to
was the
you.
topic?
Early education
Oh, yeah.
roundtable or panel.
Right. First,
Representative Chang.
thank you. Bylaws committee. Did we ever, what happened to roundtables? Did we cut it from the bylaws?
We left it in. We acknowledged you had made a good suggestion on it to evaluate its usefulness. It was something that the three of us weren't at the time you sent that prepared to just take out altogether until we got full impact from the board, although we didn't have an objection to removing them. And really, I feel ambivalence about the issue, so I think that'll be something that Fraser can pick up.
I think macro level question before I get into a panel or anything about what we do around
Early childhood.
Yeah. is the mode through which we may have these conversations where the goal is to learn from experts, right? So I think tying it into our public sessions, we all, including the staff, I'm pretty clear. It just extends the time to be quite late, right, for those meetings. Would folks be open to having panels other times of week where not everyone has to be a part of?
Yes.
They could be virtual.
That's what I was thinking, virtual would,
They don't have to be at the public sessions. And so, right, I think I'm hearing,
Okay.
yeah,
So
so
I guess-
that's question one.
So the question, I just wanted to clarify, so, and these would be for the board and not necessarily for the public. I mean, we can televise them, obviously, or record them or live stream them, but the goal would be for like the public to attend and ask questions, or would
They're
it be?
invited, and for the most part, our panels in person don't necessarily. draw
Exactly,
huge
I'm
crowds,
just
right?
asking
So-
this so that I can get a sense of what it would, it could be. President Thompson has her hand up. So that's what I kind of want to miss her again. But I mean, I was like, it is definitely possible. I mean, roundtables can happen, scheduled. They just need to be noticed, just like, because if there's a quorum of members, they would need to be noticed according to the open meetings rule of DC registry.
Yep.
But President Thompson hand is up. She may also want to add something.
President Thompson.
Yeah, that's so, yes, to what Director Butler said. In addition, and Representative Chang, I know that you've been a part of panels like within committee meetings. And so sometimes like I think about when we had I think that was teacher retention. And we invited the EPPs to come and talk about their plan. So like it could both be an additional, like a special, specifically we are calling this for the purpose of this roundtable, or it could be within a committee meeting time where panelists are invited. That would also be an option that we could use since those meetings are noticed and streamed to the public.
Super helpful. So would love to share what I've been learning and get your feedback. I've been now interviewing a lot of adult reading instructors at some of the charter schools that we have that teach adults, including one in my ward. And then also a lot of the students of adult charter programs who are learning how to read. And when I ask, what is the #1 barrier for you that you're noticing? It's been childcare across the board. the teachers say that of like, when you get a reason why someone who doesn't come to class, attendance is low, it's childcare. And if the student is explaining to me what the biggest barriers for them to learn is childcare. And so having now also then just spoken to more and more of our childcare providers, and then also like early learning centers, and just trying to get a better lay of the land. I mean, like everything, it's all interconnected. I know it's a bit outside of our immediate K through 12 focus.
Not really.
And exactly, it's not really. So I think would love to learn more. I'm just very interested in learning more and would love to, recruit other board members to do this with me. Learn more about first our adult learners, what are their needs? Some of the schools even said to me, they won't accept students who are below a 5th grade reading level to enroll because they just don't have the capacity to catch adults up to that level, which basically rules out a lot of students who want to be going to some of these programs, but they don't have the capacity to help. So there's a whole theme there. And then there's, I think, what I want to learn better about how to respond to the adult learners and the teachers is like, why is childcare so difficult, and what are the levers that we can help? What are the levers that we can help? Yeah.
This sounds to me like we need to have a resolution.
I think we can have resolution, but I think the first step will be having a roundtable.
No,
so
I
that we
agree.
know what
I'm just saying, because this is something the city needs to know about. Because the city doesn't know about. So the resolution would go to the council, that testimony, and all those kinds of things, but because, a 5th grade reading level is a high reading level.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Most of, yeah. So
no, it is.
Yeah.
Someone reading on a 5th grade level can read a lot of things. Someone who can't read at a 5th grade reading level and hasn't learned how to read. I have a student in my class at UDC that is there right now. All right. Those students are neglected. And especially, and we're talking a lot about students for whom English is a second language. All right. And a lot of the people who come to DC for whom English is a second language are not literate in their language. So this is a primal need.
Yep.
Thank you for
fully
bringing that.
agreed. And I think if we have the capacity to, and I do think that virtual is the easiest way to engage the experts, but also invite the folks who might not be available to come in person on a Wednesday evening.
Yeah.
I would love to work with anyone else who's interested on either the adult education side to host a panel on just bringing in some of the adult educators. I mean, my particular interest, of course, is literacy, and those who are teaching reading. It also came to my attention because the task force right now is not including anyone who teaches adults as part of the cohort of people who can take structured literacy training, which exacerbates this problem, right? Because then who has the capacity to help adults in DC catch up to even be at a 5th grade reading level? I don't know where that skill set is besides a few nonprofits that are relying on philanthropy, right? And is one theme that I'd love to propose as one of those virtual panels. And then another virtual panel I'd love to talk about is this broad, fluffy question to me of like, why is childcare so challenging? And what are the levers for us to actually address that? What are even other states doing around that, or how are we relative to where they are? I know nothing.
President Thompson's hand's been up, and then Representative. Well, I don't know who was first. If you, Williams. Okay. President Thompson.
I think one of the things that I've learned when it comes to the question of adult education, there's kind of 2 buckets. One is like a lot of people are doing workforce development. And then there's a smaller subset of providers who are actually doing adult literacy. The adult literacy providers are the ones who would focus on the under like the, you know, 5th grade and below reading levels. And much of their funding and resources do currently come like through OSSI. But there aren't as many resources in the city for adult literacy as there are for workforce development. So overwhelmingly, that is what providers are focused on. I think we maybe have no more than 3 at this point who focus on adult literacy specifically.
So I was just gonna say, Representative Chang, that I'd be happy to work with you on partnering on that. I think Ward 1 is like perfectly situated with, you know, Berea Public Charter School, and Carlos Rosario and a couple of other adult learner institutions that are also tackling the childcare piece. And so being it, and, you know, Berea's been, you know, nationally recognized for kind of what they're doing for meeting that need. So I'm happy to talk with you about how we could leverage those best practices. I know there have been funding challenges that they've wanted the city to address, because in order to make sure that they have capacity for that programming, they need to make sure they have the money to be able to do it. So I think that'd be a way to be able to amplify the issue.
And also the 2 state programs,
What are the 2 state programs?
Blue State and
Oh, state.
Oh, stay. Yeah.
state program.
And Roosevelt State is also in Ward 1.
Yeah.
The childcare space.
Yeah.
Which we
Jeff,
fought
and
for last year.
that's
Yeah.
one of the big problems at what will now be Corning Patterson State Program is childcare.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you very much, Representative Chang. You have a letter that we've put out, is it gone already?
No, it is embargo because we wanted member feedback.
Right. So this is a letter to the chancellor about the computer programs, the problems about computers not being available to our students at the beginning of school because of budget cuts. And we are going to meet with the chancellor on the 19th of September to talk to him, not only about this, but about the beginning of school. So if you'd like to take a quick glance at this, or if you read it already, we're just trying to find out what the status is right now of computers that were supposed to be given to students at the beginning of school.
I would say if you have any feedback on this, if you could put it in writing and send it to us by Friday, so that we can prepare to transmit.
Us being Director Butler.
Oh, yeah, if you can send it to me via email, then, I mean, the staff is working on it, yes.
Or should I? President
I mean, you can include President Thompson, but we would just take whatever feedback you all give us and put it in a letter first before we send it to,
The next,
oh, I'm sorry, thank you.
Have we reached out to DCPS at all to kind of
Yes.
see if they can give a simple answer to
Yeah,
this?
we have a meeting with them September 19th.
Okay, so this is going to be after that meeting, we send this letter out, because I'm actually thinking it's probably going to be a very simple answer. They're going to say, we proposed it and the council cut it.
We can assume that, we don't know.
Okay,
But it could be, I think if the timing of when the letter is sent, you all want to have a discussion about that, I think that would be helpful. So if you're proposing that we have the meeting first, and then if we are unsatisfied with, or send the letter and then have the meeting to follow up to get a response, if we haven't gotten a response by our meeting date.
well, we're gonna meet with them on the 19th. We just don't know what the situation is right now. I think we should send a letter.
And they need to provide an answer so we can talk about this.
Yeah, so we can talk about it.
I think the thought was to send a letter sooner rather than later. That way we can have another checkpoint at the meeting in case we didn't get a response or we needed clarity on the response. So like when I sent the email to the members, I was like, hey, does it make sense for us to send a letter? If so, we can send a letter, we'll get a meeting on the books, but that way we have multiple interactions. And then if necessary, which is probably going to be necessary, we would also craft a resolution, but the goal would be to get the letter out before we have the meeting with DCPS and the meeting to be a follow-up. You know, we have some other things to discuss too, but they would have seen it before and hopefully given a response.
Is that okay with everybody?
It's helpful, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have SR 23-9, need for appropriations. You have this in your folder.
And I will say about this is that we are suggesting that instead of voting on this in September, that we vote on it in October so that we've had an opportunity to talk to OSSI and we're clear about what our enhancements are. Because we don't want to vote on something and then haven't had time to make the discussion yet. And we also just have a little bit more leeway because the mayor's office has not released any of the materials to submit. So it's not like we have to vote by the 20th to get something into the mayor's office. They actually have told us the timeline in which they will be releasing budget items will be late September, early October. So we won't even get the forms to submit until October, and they won't be doing to the first week of November, which gives us an extended timeline to vote at our October meeting instead of trying to rush it through. But just wanted to get feedback if that was okay with you all, instead of trying to vote on the need for appropriations and enhancements in September, is that we push that so that we can get further clarity on issues with the sped hubs before completing this document.
I think that's true. I think that's good.
Is that, everybody agree with that?
I do. I think Kathleen wants to make sure we all speak up for those who do agree.
Yeah, just keep that in mind so that they all know to make sure that your questions, your follow-up items are noted.
As Representative Patterson, I agree with that timeline for those reasons stated.
Excellent. We will shift that to October. Thank you, Representative Williams,
Thank you.
for being proactive, doing
Let there be light.
exactly.
Next is SR 23-10, the working group for board bylaws and standard operating procedures. We've talked about this, but we have to have a okay from the board to do it in a resolution. These will all be voted on at our September 20th meeting.
So I noticed, I want to clarify a question. So I noticed the agenda of the retreat also focused on the standard operating procedures, correct?
There's an activity and some time dedicated to that, yes.
So how does that connect with this?
Well, this resolution is the appointment of the people to the working group. So at the August working session, the admin committee appointed, said that Vice President O'Leary, Representative Henderson, Representative Best, myself, and Darren will take the work across the finish line. So essentially, and then asked that if the board agreed, they would be comfortable with us making the final decision on all the bylaw pieces, because based on all the edits that were given to the bylaws committee, we would just take any of the outstanding questions that people had concerns about and respond to those. They gave the working group the autonomy to make those final decisions on those, because we're not changing any other parts of the bylaws that had already been agreed upon by the state board, but we just didn't feel like it was necessary to bring it back. But we asked that during the August working session, and then this group be responsible for answering those outstanding questions and literally doing the process of mapping out and writing all the standard operating procedures that will go along with that.
We don't have any.
I fully support the group getting together. So they're going to be making recommendations then to Dr. O'Leary, who recommends, because the bylaws went through the bylaws committee, then to the admin committee for approval. So this is a recommendation to Dr. O'Leary, which he would then decide to either incorporate or not into his print of the final bylaws that will come out of the admin committee and then go to the full board is the third step. Because I understood this as kind of a three-step process. We have the bylaws committee, then we have the admin committee, which by our current rules have to approve any bylaws changes. And then we have the full board voting on it.
Well, the
So-
working group will report to the admin.
Right, that's exactly what.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why.
That goes to you and you can
Yeah.
choose to,
Yeah, and he's on the committee, so it's like.
Yeah.
Vice President Leary is on the committee with Representative Best and Representative
And then
Henderson.
what comes
makes
out of that, we vote on.
Yes,
to the full
Right.
board.
exactly. And so but the activity that we have planned for the board retreat is that standard operating procedures. It is a tipping point for us to start writing out standard operating procedures. We took a couple of the more, not couple, we took a process that we feel is important, like getting from an idea to a statutory resolution to map out standard operating processes and activity. And then based on what the group finalizes, that will be part that goes in the standard operating procedures. But we wanted to use that as an example so that we can get everybody's feedback. It's an engaging activity that the staff is working on. And then at the end of that activity, to show as an example, we list, we actually ask a question and there are things on the table that says, what are the other things that you want standard operating procedures on that will go to the working group? But again, the bylaws have already been fully mapped out. We're now at the process, like, how do we operationalize all the things and memorialize them so that people have a reference guide to go to when they have, well, how does this happen? What is this? It's like, what are the steps to bring something from idea to fruition? Or like, how do you run a meeting or?
I appreciate that. I'm curious, in terms of taking something from the admin committee to the whole board, there are 4 people on the admin committee, correct?
Yeah, so
4
that,
members,
yes, but the working group includes people who are not on the
right?
admin committee.
But are there like formal votes? Like, what happens if it's 2-2? Like in a vote of the admin committee, does that come to the whole board? Like, I guess I'm curious about the process of something going from the admin committee to the whole board, and then does the whole board, is the process of changing the bylaws a simple majority or is it a super majority?
Well, that is in the bylaws. I can go back and.
Here's the answer to your question is, that would be a standard operating procedure.
So we don't have that yet.
But no, like, so the part about what is voted on for changing the bylaws currently exists in the bylaws. There's a
Sure.
provision that says this is how you vote to change the bylaws. Do I know it off the top of my head? But that is already in the bylaws that was sent around by the bylaws committee that no one had a problem with. So I can find the exact.
I get
page
it,
and send
I
it to
just
you.
didn't remember. Yeah.
It's a majority on change the bylaws. And I think to answer your question in committee is, Dr. O'Leary is the chair of the committee, would propose a print of what he recommends, probably will be closely in line with what the subcommittee or whatever on this working group is recommending. And then if people want to make amendments to that, an amendment, if it goes 2-2, would fail. And then presumably he'd have the votes to get it out of the whole package out of committee. And then, if not, I guess we could have President Thompson as the tie-breaking vote. She's on every committee, right?
Well, she's actually on that committee,
Oh.
not in the ex officio.
Oh, gosh.
So it's only 4 people.
Mm.
Ideally, how it gets voted out, I'm not clear on, but everything that gets voted out of most committees is done by a majority vote. And so if there, by chance, there is not a majority, I can look up and figure out what happens next.
Yeah, I'm just curious. The government teacher in me wants to.
Yeah, says the majority vote would be 3 of the 4 people. If for whatever reason, 2 of the 4 decide not to support what comes out of it,
For it to officially say it's been committee
it
approved.
has to be,
Right.
has to be.
On a committee of 4.
On the committee of 4, it has to be the majority.
It doesn't have to recant.
But- And we would have the authority as a board to waive the rule that it has to go to that committee, and we could in theory discharge the committee if it's stuck there.
Again,
In theory.
we're taking
Hopefully it
the
won't get
Senate
to that.
approach here.
But in order to move out of the committee, it needs a majority vote.
Okay, great.
I guess my question is, so are there any concerns about the people who are on the working group? And we did joint with staff and members because the standard operating procedures, unlike the bylaws, actually deal with staff work. And we wanted to make sure that their voice was represented there.
All right, no, everybody's with that. Okay, the next is -11, girls wrestling. I've talked to you all about this before. President Thompson? Did you have something?
I was just gonna say thank you to the people who are who have accepted the invitation to serve on the working group, because it's work that we've been doing for a long time. And I appreciate you all just stepping up to take it to the finish line, because you could have told me no, but I'm glad you didn't. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. So this state board resolution support for DC athletic associations to sponsor girls wrestling. I don't know if any of you have been in touch with Dana Richard. He's testified several times with the at the state board meetings about this. And the council is working on this now. So we're just in support of that. But it's, yes.
Can I ask you a question? First of all, thanks for doing this. 100% support of girls wrestling. I think it's fantastic that we're doing this. The one thing I was a little bit concerned about here is, you know, since we have some schools that are smaller schools here, particularly within our charter schools, if you have a situation where you have a lack of interest initially, particularly as we try to get this rolling, specifically saying we have to separate it, we can't do co-ed wrestling anymore, just makes me worried that if we had like only one or two potentially, you know, females interested in wrestling, that they wouldn't be able to kind of team up with a co-ed team and have people to wrestle against in practice. I just want to make sure that we're not through this kind of separating it, we're taking away an opportunity potentially at some of the smaller schools for girls to be able to wrestle with boys in a co-ed fashion if they don't have a critical mass of people within certain weight classes to you know, practice with. Basically, it is like a situation I'm thinking of, and I can just work with you offline on this, but I'm thinking of specifically if you have maybe a girl who's, you know, either heavier or lighter, wanting to be able to wrestle with it, you know, in practice with boys of a similar weight. You know, sometimes that is better to have people competing against, but I'll just follow up with you afterwards on it. I just don't want to preclude that opportunity to have kind of co-ed, you know, teams mixing for practice if the numbers aren't there to support a girls team right off the bat.
Well, the other thing that like charter schools do, like with smaller schools that have like say if a school isn't big enough to have a football team and a student is interested in playing football, then they can opt into another school's football team. So
okay, and I just kind of want to make sure we think
the only thing, I'm glad you brought that up. A charter school student can't play for a DCPS team.
Correct.
They can, an independent school, we have independent schools that aren't charters, and like Banneker. I had Banneker baseball players play for me for over 20 years because they wanted to play baseball, but they don't have a team. So that I think that we can talk about that.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're doing it in a way where every kid gets a chance to participate.
I don't think that that's gonna be a hindrance.
You don't want to preclude that.
I think the way it's written, it's adding a category, it's not.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not being exclusive. It's
Right.
That's my reading.
inclusive. Yeah, thank you. Everybody agree with this? Just a nod or a hand or something?
For any feedback, if you could just send it in writing so we can make the appropriate edits, that would be wonderful.
And the last resolution is SR 23-12, the selection of a representative to the School Safety Enhancement Committee. And you have that, and that committee is looking for one of the representatives to volunteer for that. You
And
have-
so just,
Go on.
sorry. I was gonna say, President Thompson and I received an email from the Deputy Mayor's of Education's office, because they're the group tasked with hosting the School Safety Enhancement Committee per the budget amendment that was passed this past summer. And so the state board has a seat on that. And so they're asking us to identify a person. And President Thompson's gonna say more about that.
Yeah, so we have to identify a person to sit on this committee, just like we have for other committees. One question I have is Dan Davis, our student advocate, has been really involved in the work. So I don't know of a seat that's been reserved for him. So one of the questions I have for the deputy mayor's office or possibly Chairman Mendelson is if like Dan was interested, is there a way to, like, is he included, given much of the work around safe passage and other things have come out of that office? Or is that something we would be expected to account for within our agency seat? So I don't know the answer to that. Outside of that, we do, just like any other appointment, we can appoint a member or we can appoint a staff member. And I guess that could be inclusive of Dan. So I don't know if anyone is particularly interested or if people have any reactions to just the thought about the student advocate being involved, because I think it's important that they're like that they continue to be involved in the work. And so I do want to open it up for a discussion. Last thing I'll say, I believe we have to make a decision, or I'm supposed to communicate a name by the end of the week.
I think that's important that we find out if Dan could do that.
Madam President, Mr. Vice President, I think there are people that are on the state board who are interested, that's worked on it a long period of time. So I think you do have some people that are very interested in being the representative from the state board.
I'm sure there are people, and I'm asking who's interested, but I'm also asking one of the questions, because if it's possible for us to have a representative and the Office of the Student Advocate in a different seat, that would be my goal. But I do think one of the questions I have, because I don't know if the Office of the Student Advocate has been accounted for, is have they, like, I want to ask them that question and kind of encourage them to include the Office of the Student Advocate if they have not already, is what I'm saying.
I'm interested.
Okay, anybody else besides Representative Reed? Representative Best?
And then I'm gonna defer to one of those two. I do it, I'm interested, but it would be nice to see you guys.
By all means, you've
No.
been involved in this for a long time, so I would defer.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I think the three of us are interested, and maybe we can figure out, how to go from there. But I do think that there is interest amongst them.
There's a very hot topic in our particular wards, what have happened, and I know same thing for President Thompson, is traffic is really a big thing and around those sections. So I know we have very big interests in it.
And I appreciate Representative Thompson considering digging in the Office of Student Advocate, because yes, for all those reasons.
Right, I do too.
Yeah.
So can we just stick a pin in it until we find out from the deputy mayor about that? And then,
Say Dan could be the only person on file, Dan be the first.
but let's find that out, and then I'll get back to everybody.
I think Claire is the
Right.
person who was, because
They've
Yeah.
emailed us and I can
Uh-huh.
respond back and ask that question.
Okay.
And I think, I'm okay with whoever it is, as long as there's communication with the school community and well-being community. Because that's one of the things that we're working on.
Okay.
Any other comments? We're at a good place with that, right?
Yes.
Okay, and Representative Williams, you want to talk about your addition to the agenda?
Yes, Catherine, would you mind updating us just where things stand on the September panel?
And I'm sorry, Captain, can you move down so we can hear you? Because we cannot hear you all the way down there.
Right next to,
So we have currently one person confirmed for the panel and then two other people who have been invited, but like for some of the logistics we haven't confirmed. So confirmed, we have
Betsy Wolf, who's an education research scientist and award sick parent, to come speak about different ways to present metrics on the dashboard. And then we asked a senior fellow from the Urban Institute who does a lot around equity and being like equity aware when you do data visualization. And also like accessibility and data visualization to come kind of speak to that part of how information can be presented on the report card, particularly when you're disaggregating data and keeping in mind like how sometimes the comparison is set up between schools that isn't necessarily effective. And then we've also requested to see if someone from NASB can attend to kind of give us like a multi-state perspective on other metrics that are included, but that's not confirmed either. I think there's probably room for another person on the panel. So if there are suggestions from the members, we are taking those. Or if there's like a certain perspective you would like to see added to those three, that would be helpful. I know there was interest from several members independently to get some of the same people who are not local. We're gonna reach out to them to see if we can get a written testimony. But if there's someone else who is local who could kind of complement those three perspectives, please let us know.
And I think it would be helpful to just talk about what type of engagement with the committee has happened up until this point around the panel. That you all can share that. I don't know if this is the first time you're hearing about it, or have you like been a part of the development conversation? I'm just gonna be curious that now.
We've given some recommendations, and then I think as we decided that it's just gonna be local experts and that we don't have certain people confirmed, we're still in a brainstorming phase of additional people to fill out the panel.
And I'm not opposed to some of the people that were not local that were suggested, if we need to make sure that we have a good, robust conversation around it, because I know there's been members that spoke to the last iteration of the state board that had a lot to say about it when we were talking about the report card and stuff like that. So I'm not totally opposed to that. We just want to give people opportunity, but if there's someone that, and I'm saying this also to my co-chair, if there's someone that is not local but has a perspective, has been there before, I'm open to making sure that we give them an opportunity to, so that we can have a more.
Yeah, I don't think it's confirmed that we'll be able to host a hybrid panel in that space.
Okay.
So like by the September working session, I know we're kind of working on it, but I wouldn't
And
want
that's
to plan
supported,
for like a person to be online and then not actually be able to.
yeah, that logistical limitation is understandable. Okay.
And I'm sorry.
President Thompson.
I don't think I had my hand up unless it's a legacy hand on the like a go.
Yeah, it was
it's a legacy. Mhm.
So in terms of the panel, I think what would be most helpful for me to understand, like, what is the goal of what we want the panel to achieve in terms of speakers? Are we hoping to gather input that add to the feedback that we share with OSCE in those three areas that they've outlined, or is the panel have another goal or objective?
For me, it's as one of the co-chairs, it's to just get information over what report cards in different areas have worked really well, what, you know, it's kind of almost like this type of dashboard, since we are focusing kind of on a dashboard, you know, what goes into a dashboard and been very impactful for other jurisdictions. And I know a lot of these people have worked with different dashboards, some of the people that have been suggested, just to find out those type of things. And then because they also know the community, what they've heard about as well.
That's helpful. That's good for me. Thank
Great.
you.
All right. Everybody okay with that? All right. Thank you for your time and engagement tonight. As a reminder to our viewing public, the state board will continue to hold in-person meetings. As an additional reminder, the state board will be at Nationals Park this Sunday, God willing, if the weather forecast is not good at all, to hand out swag, answer questions, and share the important work of our agency when the Dodgers come into DC to play the National. We hope to see you there. The next public meeting will be held on Wednesday, September 20th in the old council chambers, which have been a little bit renovated, right? No?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay, at 441 4th Street Northwest. Seeing no further business before the state board, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Representative Patterson has moved. And a second by Representative Goulet. I'd like to ask for the yeas.
Yes, yes.
Yes,
And-
and thank you, thank you, Vice President O'Leary, for leading the meeting tonight.
Thank you for your different voice, President Thompson.
I'm
And
doing my
get
best.
that- Please. This meeting of the state board is adjourned at 7:53 PM on September 6th, 2023. We will see you again in 2 weeks.
That was the longest nap.
Good night.
Good night.
If you all have a swag bag, please take an opportunity to thank Javon and Layla for coordinating the ordering and distribution of your material. They worked very hard to get this to you before the baseball game. So